The weirdest thing is happening right now. Smartwatches are starting to look like what they actually are.
This Apple Watch band is perfect. Put my Apple Watch on my ankle.
It looks a little bit like an ankle monitor, so people don't bother you.
That's right, ankle monitors. Well, as it turns out, they're actually a lot worse than that. Now, we all know that tech companies collect our data, maybe through apps or their devices, and then sell it to advertisers. It's not really news anymore. Data is the new oil. But knowing this, think about how crazy it is that we deliberately choose to buy things like Apple Watches, while other people, say like former inmates, are forced to wear actual ankle monitors that they'd happily pay to be free of.
It's gotten bad to the point that when my phone vibrates, I get scared because I think I'm in trouble.
I think those people know abundantly well how awful it is to wear a real ankle monitor, even if it looks as sleek as the Shadow Watch. Yes, that's a real gadget used by law enforcement. And take a look at how similar these things look. Yeah, but funny enough, well, it's actually just kind of depressing. Smartwatches are actually allowed to take more data than parole officers are even allowed to gather about their clients without a specific warrant. And now, ICE and probably other security agencies in liberal countries soon, well, they just bought access to that data through some ridiculous legal loophole. That means that if you're in the US, they can now track your location through your phone.
Because we have a nice little database.
Or your ankle watch. Apple monitor. Wait, no, Apple Watch. But this is actually just the beginning of a much bigger story. It's about what we prioritize as a society, and maybe more tellingly, what we don't. And I think this is something everyone needs to be thinking very seriously about right now. I remember back in high school, we'd have this classic debate about totalitarianism. Is our world today more like George Orwell's 1984's Big Brother watching over everything you do? Or more like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, where we're pretty much just conditioned to go along with everything? Well, nowadays, I think there's a pretty good argument to be made for the fact that we have both. It just depends on where you stand in society. Like, if you're someone who's had trouble with the law, you have to wear something like a Shadow Watch at all times. It's made by a private company in the corrections industry, Shadow Track. Now, I don't want to get into the whole prison industrial complex and how private companies incentivize crime to sell products, because this kind of surveillance isn't just reserved for the people who haven't followed the law. Take, for example, this guy, Chris Singh. He's an Amazon driver who makes videos about his job. Well, he used to be. Apparently, he finally got laid off. But he sums it up pretty well here.
But now we have these bad boys that have AI technology in them. So like I said, it stays on all day.
Ah yes, another feel-good story from Amazon. No, but my point is that if you're an Amazon driver or a former inmate, you have surveillance imposed onto you by other people. It's similar to what we see in 1984, where Big Brother watches everything the main character Winston does, and even understands every impulse he has better than himself. Just like Big Brother, Amazon cameras record and report every action, and very accurately I should add with AI, of the driver to the Amazon HQ, which then either penalizes or rewards them for those actions.
And if you work with an owner that really cares about his pockets and you're a bottom tier driver, you might have a rough time, or even worse, getting fired.
It's maybe not quite as crazy as what we see in 1984, which, to be fair, is the most depressing book ever, but it's still a pretty shitty situation to be in, especially if you can't find another job, right? But as depressing as all this is, what is actually crazy is the luxury surveillance industry, the flip side of the coin. And just so we don't have to pause the video again, let's just do a quick cybersecurity check. Like I said before, surveillance doesn't necessarily start with some agency targeting you. It starts with the everyday ordinary stuff like apps tracking your location and that data quietly being sold to third parties. Data security is more important than ever. That's why today's video partner is NordVPN. With NordVPN, I can literally just hit connect and then all my internet traffic is encrypted and my real IP address is hidden. I can choose from one of their 8,000 plus servers, all with different locations, takes like 2 clicks. But Nord also has services like dark web monitoring, which scans the internet for all your sensitive information. That means your social security number, your email, your credit card info, stuff like that. And then it alerts you if something's wrong. Nord also has Threat Protection Pro, which is an antivirus system that blocks phishing, malware, and even trackers and ads. I personally use NordVPN every time I'm on public Wi-Fi, which is quite often because I like to work from cafes, but I use their other security features pretty much all the time, just so I stay safe and don't feed into those surveillance systems that we're talking about here. You can now get an exclusive NordVPN deal with 4 bonus months if you sign up for the 2-year plan too, using my link, nordvpn.com/VernerVPN. That's nordvpn.com/VernerVPN. And it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's really no risk. Luxury surveillance. It's a term coined by the researcher Chris Gilliard, and it's all about the people who actually have the ability to say yes to being surveilled. People just like, well, me. I have a smartphone, and I use all sorts of apps that use my data too. I can't justifiably afford buying an Apple Watch, but I might see an ad for it and think, man, this thing is pretty cool. I can monitor my heart rate and even my blood oxygen levels and all that cool stuff when I go for runs. Which I don't. But even if you're not into all those features, watches have for decades also been seen as status symbols. And so I might buy one to show that I belong to a certain group of people. Like, check this guy out on the subreddit r/smartwatches. He asks, what's the most expensive thing I should buy, considering I'm not interested in sports features? And that pretty much sums it up, right? This person is literally looking for something expensive, and he doesn't even care if it has all these tech features. But of course, the Amazfit Active 2 or the OnePlus Watch 3 or whatever he ended up buying, well, they do have these features. And they're probably sending his data, as I speak, to some tech companies selling his ad spots and info to agencies like ICE too. Now, this is more like what we see in Brave New World.
You're going to take the recommended actions, and you are going to feel better.
It's the carrot rather than the stick. In Brave New World, people willingly submit themselves to the world state, where they quite literally have been conditioned and even genetically engineered to do so from birth. I mean, they grow up in vats. And so the citizens in Brave New World actually like and even want to be surveilled to fit in through constant monitoring. It makes them happy and it makes them feel safe. Because surveillance is part of a package deal that includes endless distraction like the fantastic drug Soma, for example. Just like smartwatches include convenient and fun apps. And so they're too busy pursuing instant gratification to care about or even notice that their lives are being monitored. Who cares, right? As long as I can get my Soma and I'm happy. Or we might say, as long as I can buy what I want and it makes my life more convenient or better in some way. But I would argue that all under the guise of freedom of choice to buy whatever we want, it's actually just making our lives worse. And worse than that, it's even making it worse for the people who don't even own these devices. Now, these videos take me pretty long to produce, and I'm a one-man team. So if you're enjoying the video so far, it helps out so much if you can drop it a like. And it helps out even more if you subscribe if you want to see more. All right, that's it. Back to it. Nowadays, we don't just buy things like smartwatches and phones to surveil ourselves. We also buy devices to surveil other people, even in our community. Take smart home security cameras. It's an industry worth $11.8 billion in 2025, up from $9.9 billion in 2024. That's a lot of money. But I mean, it makes sense. We're constantly bombarded with news and stories about how unsafe the world is. Seriously, just look at any newspaper's front page or any social media's most trending feed. And so we buy these things because we want to feel safe. There's no harm in that, right? But here's the thing. Is the world really less safe than it used to be? And do these things actually make us more safe anyway? It's a rhetorical question. It isn't, and they don't. But tech companies want us to believe the opposite. All so they can make more money. As you can see here, the global crime rate has actually fallen in the past decades. According to this metric, the world is getting safer. But to be fair, there is an exception. That is, we are actually seeing a rise in non-violent forms of crime, such as cyber-dependent crimes. And that means if you own a smart home security system now, you're at a higher risk of being a victim of one of those crimes. Ironic, I know, but it actually gets worse. What's more is that doorbell cameras might also make us more vulnerable to being burgled. That's because they indicate the homeowner has money and has stuff that's worth stealing. And it's not like burglars can't wear masks and hats anyway.
The more cameras they have, the more interesting their property must be.
The point is, the very thing these devices are meant to do for us, well, they might actually just be doing the opposite. They may actually create the fear that they advertise to alleviate. But worst of all, and I think this is really the bottom line, is that they're being used to pit us against each other. If you're an Amazon driver right now, you're being surveilled in the car by Amazon, but also by other regular folk with cameras when you get out and drop off a package. And of course, the Ring doorbell or whatever hanging on the door has probably also been sold by the company that employs you, Amazon. Actually, Ring just partnered up with Flock Security, a surveillance company that also gives data to, you guessed it, the Secret Service and ICE. But the point is, we're basically starting to spy on each other like never before, and for no real reason.
When you're in your yard, you have a reasonable expectation of privacy.
Are shooting your property
that
over the
camera
fence.
was shooting over that fence.
Nowadays, it's hard to even go for a walk in your own neighborhood without being surveilled from every angle. And if you're walking with your smartwatch, forget about it. What we have here with luxury surveillance are companies selling us the devices that actually make us feel less safe. Like you might see an ad and subconsciously feel that you want to be like that happy person holding the newest iPhone 18 Max Supreme or whatever, or the newest and smartest of smart home devices of them all that'll really pimp up your house. But let me tell you, it's not going to pimp up your house. It's more likely just going to make you more skeptical of other people.
I just don't know what to do, folks. I can't imagine anything creepier to do to your neighbors.
And then if you're on the other side of the door, you might think, man, I'm so tired of these rich people who want to monitor everything I do on the street. Do they even know that Amazon and Apple exploit child labor in Congo to source their materials? And I agree. But the point is, these devices are building barriers between us regular folk and not the unity we actually need to work together so we can stand up to the real problem.
She's not a good neighbor.
No, are you? I'm not talking.
Like, if we're bickering amongst ourselves, how can we ever organize a movement to demand regulation against big tech? You and me and smart home security owners, and I feel like I have to mention immigrants too, seeing as we're discussing ICE, well, we're not the problem here. This whole mess of mass surveilling, well, it's because a few people at the very top want to add more fictional numbers to their unfathomably huge bank accounts. When we begin to think about it like this, then it makes sense why corporations want us to spy on each other, and even ourselves too, and how ingenious it is of them to even sell us the very devices we use to do so. When it comes down to it, this is a problem with capitalism, as it so often is with most of our issues in our society. Tech companies use our data to make money, and then they grow and grow into monopolies that don't pay their fair share of taxes. Taxes that would actually help improve society. Meanwhile, us regular folk are paying our taxes, and somehow we don't see much from it. But that's not because of immigrants, right-wing nuts, or left-wing nuts, or the overblown amount of criminals out there. All regular people here. No, surveillance, just like the many other big corporate industries like oil, defense, agriculture, well, they like to spread these narratives about why everyone else, except for themselves, are to blame for the problems in our society. And that happens quite subconsciously through, say, advertising of smart home security systems.
Hey, you.
I got the wrong house. You got the wrong neighborhood.
Now, thankfully, in a lot of countries, including the US here, there are already strict privacy laws in place. In 2024, for example, the Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale Act actually passed the House with pretty strong bipartisan support. This is a piece of legislation that would end the loophole that allows ICE to buy data from tech companies. It needs to go through the Senate now and not be vetoed by Trump to be put into effect. But the problem is, Big Tech is lobbying the government like never before. In 2025, they spent an unprecedented $109 million to try to influence legislation in the country, just so they can keep profiting from data and division. What this essentially is the government who's meant to look out for the interests of its people, while it's just giving power over to corporations. Because by God, the economy also needs to grow, and tech companies are driving the economy.
Very well, but I know everybody at the table indirectly through reading about you and knowing a lot about your business, actually. We're making it very easy for you in terms of electric capacity and getting it for you, getting your permits.
But what ends up happening here is just the expansion of industries like luxury surveillance. And that also means that our energy is being used to power stuff like AI data centers, an industry that at this point looks a lot like a bubble. Imagine that money being spent on something good instead, like, say, public transport or education or healthcare. Now, the point with all this is to say that we need to take back some say in what our resources are spent on, and who's collecting our data and to what end, so they don't all fall into the hands of corporations. And to do that, we need to start trusting each other again, and collectively point our finger at the real problem here. Corporations and wavering politicians. We need regulation. I want to give a special thanks to Flaky and also Donuts and Emperor Vias. And thanks so much to all my other supporters on Patreon too. You can support my work by as little as a cup of coffee each month on Patreon. So come join the community and the Discord. Also, a very kind supporter just donated 5 free memberships each for a month for free. So you can get that gift in the description if you're one of the first 5 to click it. And if you're interested in how capitalism works, check out my other video here on why Wall-E is capitalist propaganda. And remember to go check out NordVPN at nordvpn.com/VernerVPN to keep yourself secure and get an exclusive 4 months bonus with the 2-year plan. Thanks so much for sticking with me till the end.